Have you noticed that everything seems to be falling apart at the same time? The people you trusted are disappearing. Your old dreams no longer excite you. Nothing feels familiar anymore. And deep inside, there's a strange feeling you can't explain. What if I told you this isn't the beginning of your downfall? What if it's the first sign that your greatest chapter is about to begin? Most people mistake transformation for destruction. They think life is punishing them when, in reality, life is preparing them. Stay with me until the end, because the fourth sign is the one almost everyone misunderstands. It's the quiet signal that appears just before a person completely transforms, and once you recognize it, you'll never look at your struggles the same way again. If you're searching for wisdom that strengthens the mind, inspires the soul, and helps you face life's hardest moments with courage, subscribe to the channel and join thousands of others on this journey of self-mastery. Now, let's begin. Imagine standing in the middle of a dense forest. The path behind you has disappeared. The road ahead hasn't appeared yet. You are surrounded by silence. Most people would call this being lost. But the Stoics would call it the beginning of freedom. Because you can never discover a new direction while you're still clinging to the old one. This is one of life's greatest paradoxes. Before every meaningful transformation comes uncertainty. Before every rebirth comes discomfort. Before every sunrise, there is darkness. Many people spend years praying for change. Yet when change finally arrives, they resist it. Why? Because transformation rarely looks beautiful in the beginning. It often looks like confusion, loneliness, failure, disappointment, and endings. This is where most people give up. But the strongest souls recognize something different. They understand that life often removes what no longer belongs before it reveals what truly does. Think about nature for a moment. A tree does not fear losing its leaves. It lets them fall. Not because it is dying, but because it knows another season is coming. Human beings struggle because we hold on to things that have already completed their purpose. Old identities, old relationships, old fears, old versions of ourselves. We beg life to return things that were only meant to teach us a lesson. And in doing so, we delay the very future we've been praying for. Here's something that may surprise you. Some of the most painful seasons of your life are not punishments. They are invitations. Invitations to become someone your current life could never produce. Ask yourself this. Who would you be without the approval you've been chasing? Who would you become if your greatest fear suddenly disappeared? Who are you when no one is watching? That question has unsettled philosophers for centuries. Because the answer isn't found in comfort. It's found in honest confrontation with yourself. One of the deepest psychological insights associated with Carl Jung is the idea that people often avoid parts of themselves they don't want to face. Yet genuine growth begins when we stop running from those hidden fears, emotions, and desires and begin integrating them into a stronger, more complete self. The Stoics reached a similar conclusion from a different direction. They believed suffering is not the enemy. Your reaction to suffering is. The obstacle is never just the obstacle. It is also the training ground. Think about every person you admire. Did they become wise because life was easy? Or because hardship demanded more from them than comfort ever could? Here's another question. What if the thing you're calling a crisis is actually your invitation? What if losing what felt secure is creating space for something far greater? Stay with me. Because the first sign is so subtle that many people overlook it completely. In fact, some people spend their entire lives trying to escape it. Ironically, that's exactly why they never experience the life they were meant to live. But before we reveal that first sign, consider this story. There was once a man who spent decades building the perfect life. A respected career. Financial stability. The admiration of everyone around him. From the outside, he looked successful. Inside, he felt empty. Every morning he woke with the same question. Is this all there is? He ignored it. For years. He worked harder. Bought more. Achieved more. Smiled more. But the emptiness only grew louder. Then one day, everything collapsed. He lost his position. Friends disappeared. His identity shattered overnight. Everyone called it the worst year of his life. Years later, he called it the greatest gift he had ever received. Because only after losing the life he had built did he discover the life he was actually meant to live. How many people today are secretly living someone else's dream? How many are trapped by expectations? Afraid to disappoint everyone except themselves? Perhaps you've felt that tension. Perhaps you've sensed that something inside you is changing. Not loudly. Quietly. Like a seed breaking open beneath the soil where no one can see it. And that's exactly why the next few minutes matter. Because the first sign that the best chapter of your life is about to begin doesn't look like success. It doesn't feel like victory. In fact, at first, it feels like loss. And once you understand why, you'll never fear change in the same way again. Let's uncover the first sign. The first sign that the best chapter of your life is about to begin is that your old life starts quietly falling away. Not because you're cursed. Not because you've failed. But because you've outgrown it. This is where most people panic. A friendship you've held onto for years suddenly feels forced. A job that once filled you with ambition now leaves you emotionally exhausted. Conversations that used to excite you begin to feel empty. At first, you blame yourself. Maybe I'm just overthinking. Maybe I need to try harder. But deep inside, another voice whispers something different. You've changed. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Growth has a cost. And the cost is that not everything can grow with you. Imagine trying to wear the same shoes you wore as a child. They were once perfect. Now they only cause pain. The problem isn't the shoes. The problem is that you've become larger than what once fit you. Life works the same way. Many people stay in environments that no longer nourish them because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. The Stoics warned against becoming attached to what is temporary. Everything changes. Everything passes. Everything borrowed by life is eventually returned. The wise person doesn't cling. The wise person learns to let go with dignity. Now let me ask you something. Have you noticed that some people become strangely uncomfortable around you when you begin changing? Not because you've harmed them, but because your growth reminds them of the risks they refuse to take. People who benefited from your silence often dislike your confidence. People who loved the old version of you may resist the new one. And that's painful. Because we naturally want everyone to come with us. But not everyone is meant to walk every chapter of your journey. Here's a story. An eagle spends much of its early life among other birds. It watches them fly short distances. It follows their routines. It blends in. But one day, instinct calls it higher. The eagle climbs into winds the other birds avoid. From below, they think the eagle has lost its mind. From above, the eagle realizes it has finally found its nature. Sometimes your loneliness isn't a punishment. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Carl Jung often wrote about the lifelong process of becoming more fully yourself rather than simply living according to others' expectations. That journey can feel isolating because it asks you to release identities that no longer reflect who you truly are. Most people mistake that loneliness for failure. It's not. It's evidence that your inner life is changing before your outer life catches up. Here's the pattern almost nobody notices. Before life adds something extraordinary, it usually subtracts something ordinary. Think about a sculptor. When people admire a finished statue, they celebrate what remains. But the masterpiece exists because of everything that was removed. Every strike of the chisel looks destructive. Until suddenly, Beauty appears. Could your current losses be life's chisel? Could the doors closing around you be protecting you from settling for less than you're capable of? Don't answer too quickly, because the second sign is even stranger. It confuses almost everyone who experiences it. You begin feeling uncomfortable in places where you once felt completely at home. The same habits, the same routines, the same distractions. They no longer satisfy you. It's as though your soul is quietly saying, "There's more." Many people ignore that voice. They bury it beneath endless scrolling, constant entertainment, more work, more noise, anything to avoid listening. But the few who dare to pay attention discover something extraordinary. Discomfort isn't always a warning to turn back. Sometimes it's an invitation to move forward. And when you finally accept that invitation, life begins revealing opportunities you couldn't have seen before. But here's where everything changes. Because the second sign isn't something happening around you. It's something awakening inside you. And once it begins, there's no going back. The second sign that the best chapter of your life is about to begin is a quiet restlessness that refuses to leave. Nothing dramatic happens overnight. You still wake up. You go to work. You speak to the same people. You follow the same routine. Yet something inside you keeps whispering. This isn't the end of your story. At first, you try to silence it. You tell yourself you're simply tired. Maybe you just need a vacation. Maybe you need more money. Maybe a new relationship will fix the feeling. But the voice doesn't disappear. It grows stronger. Because it isn't asking for comfort. It's asking for transformation. This is the moment where many people become trapped. Instead of changing their lives, they distract themselves from their lives. They consume more. Work more. Scroll more. Talk more. But think less. The noise becomes addictive. Because silence is dangerous. Silence forces you to meet yourself. And many people spend their entire lives running from that meeting. The Stoics deliberately practiced silence because they understood something most people never learn. A restless mind is not always a broken mind. Sometimes it is a mind waking up. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean before sunrise. The world is quiet. The waves move with steady rhythm. Nothing spectacular seems to be happening. Yet beneath the surface, powerful currents are already shifting. Your life often changes the same way. Long before anyone else notices. Something inside you has already begun moving. Have you ever wondered why certain books suddenly speak to you? Why meaningful conversations seem to appear at exactly the right time? Why lessons you ignored for years suddenly become impossible to forget? It isn't coincidence. It's readiness. Life often reveals wisdom only when your mind is prepared to receive it. There is a story of a young man who sought out an old philosopher. "I want purpose," he said. The philosopher smiled and handed him a cup. Then he continued pouring tea until it overflowed. The young man jumped back. "It's full. It can't hold any more." The philosopher nodded. So is your mind. If you never empty yourself of certainty, how will truth ever enter? Think about that for a moment. How many beliefs are you carrying simply because they've always been there? How many limits have you accepted without ever questioning them? I could never start over. I'm too old. I'm too late. I'm not talented enough. These aren't facts. They are stories. Stories repeated so often that they begin to feel like reality. Carl Jung observed that much of our behavior is shaped by unconscious patterns. Until we become aware of those patterns, we often mistake them for destiny. The moment we recognize them, we begin to reclaim the freedom to choose differently. That's why awareness is so powerful. You cannot change what you refuse to see. And perhaps that's exactly why this feeling of restlessness has appeared. Not to torment you, but to awaken you. Now here's something remarkable. Have you noticed that your standards begin changing during this season? You become less interested in shallow conversations, less impressed by appearances, less willing to trade your peace for approval. People may even tell you that you've changed. They're right. You're no longer starving for attention. You're hungry for meaning. And there is a world of difference. This is where many people misunderstand the process. They think becoming wiser means becoming harder. But true wisdom doesn't harden the heart. It strengthens it. You become calmer, more patient, more intentional. You stop reacting to every insult. You stop chasing every opportunity. You stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Not because you've become weak, but because you've finally discovered the value of your energy. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the quality of life depends greatly on the quality of thought. When your thinking changes, your world begins changing with it. But don't celebrate too early. Because the third sign is the one that frightens almost everyone. It arrives unexpectedly. It shakes your confidence. It forces you to question everything you thought you knew. For a brief moment, it feels like you're losing yourself. In reality, you're finally meeting the person you were meant to become. And once that process begins, nothing will ever be the same again. The third sign that the best chapter of your life is about to begin is also the one that scares people the most. Because it feels like you're becoming a stranger to yourself. The opinions you once defended with certainty now seem incomplete. The goals you chased for years no longer satisfy you. The identity you've carefully built begins to crack. And for a moment, you wonder if something is wrong with you. But what if nothing is wrong? What if the person you're losing was never the real you? Think about a snake shedding its skin. From the outside, it looks vulnerable, unprotected, exposed. Yet without shedding the old skin, it cannot continue to grow. Human beings experience a similar process. Only our old skin isn't physical. It's psychological. It's made of outdated beliefs, false identities, fear, and the expectations we've carried for years. Let me tell you a story. There was once a sculptor who spent months carving a block of marble. People passed by every day and laughed. You're wasting your time. It's just a rock. The sculptor never argued. He simply kept carving. One day, the masterpiece was complete. The same people who mocked him stood in amazement. Someone asked, "How did you know that statue was inside the stone?" The sculptor smiled. "It was always there. I simply removed everything that didn't belong." Now ask yourself, how much of your life has been spent becoming what others expected? How many decisions were made to gain approval instead of inner peace? How many dreams were abandoned because someone convinced you they were impossible? This is why transformation feels so painful. You're not just changing habits. You're questioning an identity you've lived with for years. And identities don't disappear quietly. They fight to survive. Your mind will whisper, "Go back. It was safer. It was easier. People liked you then." But remember this. Comfort has imprisoned more dreams than failure ever has. The Stoics understood that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing what is right despite fear. Every meaningful transformation requires walking through uncertainty. There is no shortcut. No secret path. No magical moment where fear disappears forever. The brave simply stop waiting for fear to leave before taking the next step. Carl Jung often emphasized that genuine growth requires confronting the parts of ourselves we've avoided. The more honestly we face those hidden fears, the less control they have over us. That's why this season feels so intense. You're no longer fighting the world. You're confronting yourself. And that battle changes everything. Here's something most people never notice. As your identity changes, your circle changes, your conversations change, even your definition of success changes. You stop asking, "How can I impress people?" and begin asking, "How can I live with integrity?" You stop chasing attention. You start protecting your peace. You stop measuring wealth only by money. You begin measuring it by freedom, health, purpose, and the ability to sleep with a clear conscience. That's when life begins opening doors that were invisible before. Not because the world changed. Because you did. But don't mistake this stage for the finish line. In fact, you're standing at the edge of the most important discovery of all. Because the fourth sign isn't about losing. It isn't about confusion. It isn't even about change. It's about a quiet power that suddenly begins to grow inside you. A power that cannot be bought, cannot be taught overnight, and cannot be taken away by anyone. When this final sign appears, you'll realize that everything you've endured was preparing you for the life you've always been searching for. And once you recognize it, you'll never fear your struggles in the same way again. The fourth and final sign is the one almost nobody expects. It doesn't arrive with applause. It doesn't come with instant success. It doesn't announce itself with fame or fortune. Instead, it arrives as something far more valuable. An unshakable inner peace. Not because your life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you no longer depend on perfect circumstances to feel whole. This is the turning point. The moment when you stop asking life, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That single question changes everything. Because the victim waits for rescue. The Stoic prepares for growth. Imagine two people caught in the same storm. The first curses the wind, complains about the rain, blames fate. The second adjusts the sails. The storm is the same. The difference is the mind. This is what the Stoics understood better than almost anyone. You cannot command the wind, but you can master the sailor. And once you master yourself, the world loses much of its power to control you. Now let me ask you something. Have you noticed that the things which once upset you barely affect you anymore? Criticism no longer ruins your day. Rejection no longer destroys your confidence. Silence no longer feels lonely. Waiting no longer feels unbearable. Why? Because your happiness is no longer rented from other people. It's built from within. That is freedom. And freedom is priceless. There is an old story about a king who wanted the happiest man in his kingdom to live inside the palace. His servants searched everywhere. They found wealthy merchants, celebrated generals, brilliant scholars. None of them were truly at peace. Finally, they discovered an old man sitting beneath a tree, smiling as he watched the sunset. The king asked, "What makes you so happy?" The old man replied, "I stopped demanding that life obey my wishes. Instead, I learned to govern myself." The king stood in silence. Because in that moment, he realized the old man possessed something no throne could buy. That is the final destination of every difficult season. Not endless pleasure. Not constant success. But inner stability. Carl Jung suggested that true wholeness comes when we stop hiding from ourselves and begin integrating every part of who we are, even the parts we once feared. The person who has faced their inner world no longer needs to wear a mask for the outer world. Think back to the beginning of this video. You may have believed your struggles were signs that life was against you. But now, can you see them differently? The friendships that ended made room for people who truly understand you. The failures built resilience that success never could. The loneliness taught you how to enjoy your own company. The uncertainty forced you to discover strengths you never knew you possessed. None of it was wasted. Every disappointment was a lesson. Every setback was preparation. Every closed door redirected your path. Perhaps that's why nature never rushes. The seed doesn't panic because it's buried. It knows that darkness is part of the process. The caterpillar doesn't resist the cocoon. It trusts the transformation. And the sunrise never asks permission to appear. It simply arrives. At the appointed time. Maybe that's exactly where you are today. Not buried. Planted. Not abandoned. Prepared. Not falling apart. Breaking open. So if these first signs have begun appearing in your life, don't run from them. Walk through them. Because on the other side of uncertainty is clarity. On the other side of fear is courage. On the other side of today's struggle may be the greatest chapter of your life. And remember this. The strongest people are not those who have never suffered. They are those who refuse to let suffering define them. If this message spoke to you, leave a comment below with the word rebirth. That one word is a declaration that you're choosing growth over fear, purpose over comfort, and wisdom over regret. Share this video with someone who may be standing at the edge of their own transformation. Sometimes a single message arrives at exactly the right moment. And if you're committed to mastering your mind, building emotional resilience, and applying timeless Stoic wisdom to modern life, subscribe and join this growing community. But don't stop here. If this video opened your eyes, the next lesson will take you even deeper. Watch The More You heal, the less you tolerate Carl Jung Stoicism. Because once you begin your transformation, the next challenge is learning how to protect it. Your greatest chapter doesn't begin someday. It begins the moment you choose to become the author of your own life.